This encounter takes place several years ago in a remote part of the Australian Outback. For some background, I'm a pretty built dude, 6'2", and I was around 26 years old at the time. Now, for the story. I was on a road trip with a mate, travelling around the central Queensland Outback in my old semi-reliable Nissan X-Trail. We're both science and zoology nerds, and we heard about this amazing dinosaur trail out this way, which was basically a group of 3 areas, Winton, Richmond, and Houston, that had previous dino bone discoveries, still have fossils, as well as a seriously awesome dinosaur track with preserved footprints. So we were staying at a place 3 hours from Winton for a couple of days, and we were pretty keen to check out this trail, so we made the decision to do the 6-hour round trip in a day. It was pretty ambitious. We left at 9 AM and the next morning, car packed with lunch, several litres of water and my GPS, we set off. It was a long drive, and halfway through my aircon decided to crack. If any of you have lived in or visited Australia in the summer, you would know it's brutally hot, so I'm sure you can imagine 3 hours into the trip without aircon. It was hell. To make matters worse, my GPS also stopped working as the map software didn't recognise where we were. Luckily though, I still had the old Refidex in the back seat, but it was pretty tough to revert to map reading when you're used to a computer screen telling you where to go, especially given we're talking about the Australian Outback here, complete with dirt tracks for roads and very limited signage, but I digress. Finally, we make it into the trail and kick around there for a couple of hours. Not gonna lie, it was awesome. Then decided to make the trip back as it started to get later into the afternoon and we didn't want to be driving back in the dark. As we're about to leave, this gnarly old guy who appeared to be an employee of the trail company dressed in khaki and camouflage gear, he asked us about where we were going and where we'd come from. I was vague with the details, and he gave me the stink eye, but my mate told him the name of the town we were staying at. He took a real liking to my friend, and he laughed when he told him about our lengthy journey. Apparently, we'd taken the long route, and there was a much quicker way to get back. That probably shaved about an hour off of the trip. We jumped to the directions he gave us. I mean, I can't be bothered for an extra hour without the aircon on, so we wrote down what he told me. Now, based on the directions that he gave us, we went winding along several roads in an area that I've never been in, and eventually settled straight on this narrow dirt road. We were supposed to reach an intersection for about half an hour, and take a right that continued on the road until we made it back to the main highway that would take us back. After an hour and a half of driving on this dirt trail, though we still hadn't reached the intersection, I started to freak out a bit, thinking we'd messed up a turn, but my mate was completely chilled out, and sure we'd get there eventually. I think he thought I was driving too slowly, but there's kangaroos out there, and they're very dangerous if you hit one. I've been travelling for a while now. It was getting later and later into the day. It got to the point where the petrol in the tank was only quarter full. There's no houses or other cars in sight. I wasn't really comfortable with where we were heading. The middle of nowhere, in a remote area in this wasteland that is the Australian Outback. There's not even any trees, only this dirt road and dry bushland and shrubs as far as the eye can see. I stopped the car and tell my mate to get the binoculars out of the back to just look around in case he can see a landmark. Yes, I do carry binoculars in my car and still do. He obliges and can make out a house-like structure not too far off into the distance. So we made the decision to head for that. We figured it could be a house and maybe that there's people nice enough to give us some petrol to top up the tank. As we neared the structure, it became apparent it was not a house at all. We pulled out front and see that it's an old caravan that was burned to a shell from the inside out. It's still got 3 blackened up partial walls though, so we can't really see way in, and it looks like somebody's been there recently because there were animal bones all over the place. One of the cow skulls had been hung up like a decoration. Then we see this hand-painted sign that had been stated into the ground with the words Moonlight Motel on it. My alarm bells are ringing loud and clear. I nudge my friend and say let's get the hell out of here, but he's distracted by something in the distance. It's a car, coming in the direction that we just come from. It's kicking off a ton of dust, which indicates that it's coming towards us fast. It's at this point that we both hear this creepy scratching sound coming from behind the burned out caravan, like somebody is scratching at the wall from inside. I move a little closer to try and see what it is, and there's a person in there peeking out from this hole in the damaged wall. This childlike voice then, that's obviously a grown man imitating a little girl, says, "Are you coming here to play with me?" My mate and I look at each other and book it out of there. We then get back to the X trail. Just as I'm about to reverse out, the other car stops behind my car with the high beams on. I can't see the driver, but they're in my way, so I can't reverse out from where I'm stationed at. I had no choice but to drive forward and turn around that way, narrowly missing the state's Motel sign. As we're turning to leave, the driver starts blaring on the horn, just hammering it for no reason. I just sped off, back in the direction we come from, and the other car doesn't follow. It started to twilight at this stage, and it's pretty dangerous to be out on these country roads in the dark. But we're feeling a little bit better as we manage to navigate our way back to where we come from, the Dino Trail, and even started joking a little. I then pull into the parking lot and go to the front desk area of the company that runs the tours. I explain that we'd gotten lost on our way back from town that we were staying at, and the lady there is kind enough to give us enough petrol for the ride back. I couldn't help myself but mention to her what we had seen, and the weird guy that given us directions. She then gives me this weird look as I describe the guy. She then turns to me and says, "That man doesn't work here. I saw him walking with a tourist today, and my boss had to ask him to leave." Back in 1984, I was practically still a baby. My parents were having a rough time making money, since my parents thought it'd be a genius idea to have 4 kids with no savings to speak of. They couldn't afford an apartment, so we had to move into a local motel with weekly ratings. We lived there for about a year. My dad was the only one working, and my older sister was in 2nd grade at the time, so my mum was stuck tending to the 3 kids all under the age of 4. I don't remember living there since I was so young, but I was told about the place more than once growing up, which I assume was a reminder of how far we've come as a family. One morning, when my dad was getting ready for work, and my mum got my sister ready for school, my mum notices a man at the window. She can see his shadow against the curtains that are pulled. My mum is a notorious scaredy cat, so she hustled my sister towards the bathroom where my dad was and said, "There's a man outside." My dad kind of rolled his eyes at her and went to look towards the front anyway to see if he could see anything. When he saw the shadow, his silhouette changed. He snuck quietly back, but across the room and opened the door. The man who had been standing outside the window immediately turned and ran away from the motel into the street blindly. My dad narrowed his eyes at his retreating back and the way that he ran away. He figured that if the guy was violent, he would have started instead of fleeing. He advised my mum to keep the curtains closed over the window for the day and to stay home with the door locked until he got back later, in case a guy come back. My mum didn't want my dad to leave, but my dad reminded her that they wouldn't get paid otherwise, so my mum reluctantly agreed. Now later that afternoon, I was being an annoying little crybaby, so my mum introduced my older brother to play quietly with my younger sister and watch Sesame Street while she tried to soothe me into a nap. My mum was sitting on the couch patting my back trying to make me calm down when she glanced at the window to see if anybody was there. Sure enough, there was. My mum freaked out, snatched me up from the couch, which caused me to cry harder than I already was. She locked the 3 of us into the bathroom, called Dad at work, and then locked herself in with us. My dad skipped out of work and ran home. When he got back there, the guy was still standing at the window with his hands cupped to his face. He was trying to get a better look through the curtains. My dad didn't even give the guy a warning. He punched him in the head as soon as he got close enough. The guy stumbled away from the window in a daze, and my dad slapped him around, yelling things like, "You think this is okay to scare people?" My dad hit him a few more times before the manager showed up and stopped him, thinking my dad was beating him up for no reason. The window creeper got away but never come back again after. I did floor work with my aunt and uncle in college. We were clearing an old church. The caretaker took us on a small tour. He showed us down to the boiler room. Honestly, that was creepy enough. When you go down, you have to follow this old cement staircase into the basement. There's no handrail. The only light is this halogen way over by the boilers. You can barely see the steps in front of you. Then, you realise just how huge the boilers are. They're easily 3 times my height, and built before there was welding, so they're riveted together. I mean, if you were to take me to this room blindfolded and ask me to guess where it was, I'd have told you it is a serial killer den. Anyway, we get to cleaning, and honestly, it just felt like any old job initially. However, a couple of hours in, strange noises started being heard. I thought at first it was just the building settling as the heating system cools down from the day, but then I realised the vents were still pumping out warm air. I moved from the main room, and I then started working down the hallway. I then realised that a lot of the banging sounds I heard were coming from the kitchen. The kitchen was locked shut though. It sounded like something on wheels being moved down there. I also heard a strange metallic sound. It sounded like something was being thrown to the ground. We kept on working, but kept on hearing noises. The caretaker checked in on us before he went to bed around midnight. I had to ask him, "Is this place haunted?" He then casually turns to me and says, "People tell me that all the time. I don't put too much stock into it. If it's haunted, when I shut my door behind me at night, I let them be. I hear occasional noises, but again, I don't put too much thought into it. I think it's a building mostly. But it is weird though." For me, that settled it. The weird noises coming from the locked kitchen, weird noises from the floor above, the fact that there was only one other guy in here apart from us and he was 70. You can bet your life that this place was haunted. So we kept clearing and kept on hearing sounds. I started working upstairs to get the entry stripped. And that was when things started getting really weird. A general room layout was the entrance doors on the south side of the room. The doors to the chapel were on the left. On the north side was a long hallway that crossed the church lengthwise and was going downstairs to the basement to the east side of the hall. And finally on the east side was the entrance room. There were stairs going up and doors to the bathrooms. I kept on hearing one of the doors close on the chapel side, as well as a light bang. Now these are heavy doors, taller and thicker than regular doors, heavy wood, hardwood, and they had one of those door stoppers and slowers to prevent the doors from banging. That's what made hearing the door being so weird, because if you simply opened them and closed it down, it wouldn't make any noise. I kept hearing the noise for about 10 or 15 minutes until finally it got to me and I went to the nearest door to open it. There were 6 to 8 in total, I think. I poked my head around and noticed movement on the second floor. I saw some smoke or something just kind of drift out of the room, right under the exit sign, at ceiling height at the exit of the hallway. The smoke, mist or vapour, whatever it was, moved almost like it has been sucked away out by a draft. Needless to say, I was fairly creeped out by this point. I decided it would be best to go and talk to my auntie and uncle who relayed their weird experiences back to me. Though they didn't see anything, they just heard lots of noises. My aunt said that she kept on hearing children laughing at one point. Now my uncle was just waiting to finish drying downstairs, so my aunt and I went upstairs to vacuum the long hallway and offices. After that, we're done. We got the heavy ass equipment up the stairs, and my auntie and I started joking about how it looked like a hallway just out of The Shining. That was when we both heard an insanely loud bang, explosion loud sound, at the other end of the hallway. We just kinda stared at each other, a bit horrified, then ended up doing a very quick vacuum in and heading back downstairs. By this point, it was about 5 AM, almost 6. My auntie and I took off, and my uncle stayed until the floor had been dried a couple of hours later. Now when I next spoke to him, he said that he kept on hearing strange sounds, but weirdest of all, he never heard the huge explosion sound that we did. That really creeped me out. Now imagine, all of that activity took place in the same day. Imagine if we had been there for a week, maybe month, what would have happened to us? I'm sure glad that this was the last time that we ever went to that place. Back in 1984, I was practically still a baby. My parents were having a rough time making money, since my parents thought it'd be a genius idea to have 4 kids with no savings to speak of. They couldn't afford an apartment, so we had to move into a local motel with weekly ratings. We lived there for about a year. My dad was the only one working, and my older sister was in 2nd grade at the time, so my mum was stuck tending to the 3 kids all under the age of 4. I don't remember living there since I was so young, but I was told about the place more than once growing up, which I assume was a reminder of how far we've come as a family. One morning, when my dad was getting ready for work, and my mum got my sister ready for school, my mum notices a man at the window. She can see his shadow against the curtains that are pulled. My mum is a notorious scaredy cat, so she hustled my sister towards the bathroom where my dad was and said, "There's a man outside." My dad kind of rolled his eyes at her and went to look towards the front anyway to see if he could see anything. When he saw the shadow, his silhouette changed. He snuck quietly back, but across the room and opened the door. The man who had been standing outside the window immediately turned and ran away from the motel into the street blindly. My dad narrowed his eyes at his retreating back and the way that he ran away. He figured that if the guy was violent, he would have started instead of fleeing. He advised my mum to keep the curtains closed over the window for the day and to stay home with the door locked until he got back later, in case a guy come back. My mum didn't want my dad to leave, but my dad reminded her that they wouldn't get paid otherwise, so my mum reluctantly agreed. Now later that afternoon, I was being an annoying little crybaby, so my mum introduced my older brother to play quietly with my younger sister and watch Sesame Street while she tried to soothe me into a nap. My mum was sitting on the couch patting my back trying to make me calm down when she glanced at the window to see if anybody was there. Sure enough, there was. My mum freaked out, snatched me up from the couch, which caused me to cry harder than I already was. She locked the 3 of us into the bathroom, called Dad at work, and then locked herself in with us. My dad skipped out of work and ran home. When he got back there, the guy was still standing at the window with his hands cupped to his face. He was trying to get a better look through the curtains. My dad didn't even give the guy a warning. He punched him in the head as soon as he got close enough. The guy stumbled away from the window in a daze, and my dad slapped him around, yelling things like, "You think this is okay to scare people?" My dad hit him a few more times before the manager showed up and stopped him, thinking my dad was beating him up for no reason. The window creeper got away, but never come back again after. I used to work as a third-party contractor in the convention area of a resort and hotel. Sometimes, we'd have to be there at really odd hours for the convention. So one morning, I was there at about 30 minutes before the union labourers, probably about 3:30ish. I also would like to point out that I used a couple of dating apps at the time. All of a sudden, I get this match on some of the apps from this guy whose profile picture was blank. Now these are on 2 different apps at the same time. The apps I used have a location indicator that tells you how far away they were from you. I basically replied that I was at work and busy, and if he's available later I could possibly chat. He then started saying really creepy stuff like, "Oh, I see you working." I shut down the apps. I have a small office located across from one of the convention halls. I basically held up in my office and told the union guys to check in with me when they arrived. Once they got there, I felt more safe, so I set up my desk out in the convention halls and continued with my work. Around noon, I launched the apps up again to pass my time during my lunch break. As if he'd been waiting there for that moment, he started chatting me up again from locations like only 300 feet away, then 200. I basically told him that he was creeping me out and I wasn't interested, and he stopped. A few weeks later, I had a late night teardown around 10ish. As soon as I got to my office, he appeared again and started messaging me. I got really creeped out and blocked him. This pattern continued for like a month. He would just create new profiles. Here's where the unexplained part comes in for me. After putting up with this for a month, he ended it abruptly by sending me photos of me at my work desk from the first day like he messaged me. My office is tiny, and the photos seem to be coming from a part of the office where we have an extra table. It's generally an empty table without any electronics on it. I was freaking out, to say the very least. I can't imagine how he got in the photos. I ended up giving all my information over to the company and hotel security, but nothing come of it. I just still can't figure out how he got on all of those photos. My office door stays locked, and security never reported anybody going in.